first email is from Colin H, who's from the internet. Hello, MBZ and Bally. It's been a while since I've written to you, and I hope everything is going well. It is, thanks, Colin. On to my question. Ever since I got my Switch, I have been wanting to take it on the go and bring it places. However, it seems that there really isn't anywhere I can bring my Switch that's socially acceptable. Going to a park where there would presumably be kids would seem creepy because I am a 26-year-old man. I take public transportation to work, but I'm really worried if I bring it, someone will jump me and take it. I've thought about taking it with me to a cafe to play, but remember that I live in Washington, D.C. The people that go to cafes here are ones that read their Wall Street journals, Washington Post, and talk about Dostoevsky while sipping a nice red wine. Taking my Switch from my living room and crawling with it in bed is great and all, but it seems because of these societal norms, I will forever be forced to do just that. With gaming becoming more mainstream, why does the stigma of playing video games in public still exist? Do you think that there will ever be a time where I will be free to play my Switch wherever without judgment? I really would like to have a feeling whatever precedes the Switch will also have the same gimmick. MBZ, you mentioned once that you were playing your 3DS in a bar because you weren't interested in watching the soccer game that was on the TV. Did you feel weird playing or felt judged while doing so? Do either of you two have advice for people feeling the same way that I am? Thanks again, Colin.
Well, thank you, Colin, for that question. It's a really interesting one, and one that I think we can dig into quite a bit. So, will there ever be a time when you can go outside in public and play a video game? The answer is yes, it's right now, because mobile games exist. Right. If you want a cynical way to look at it. It is that weird thing, right, where people on the trains will bring out their phone and no one judges them because the phone is this multifaceted device where you don't really know what someone's doing unless you're looking over their shoulder, right? Like someone holding up their phone could be reading a Kindle book, they could be browsing the internet, they could be sending a text. Gaming is just one of those things that could possibly be happening, and yet we know hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, are doing that. But I feel like that's probably not in the spirit of this question, right? I just wanted to bring that up because I think that's an interesting thing.
There is a distinction, and what is the distinction? Obviously, someone, not in all cases, but in most cases, someone who is playing, say, a Switch, a 3DS, a PSP, a Vita, whatever you want to call it, has invested more money into that particular video game than someone who's playing Candy Crush. And I say in most cases,
it's not only just investing more money into the game, it's literally buying a device that is dedicated to do just that.
And that's seen as like, wow, you're a gamer, like you're really into games. But whereas playing a mobile game for perhaps like 8 hours of Candy Crush every day, you're not a gamer, you're just someone who plays games. And like there is still a distinction, and it's very difficult. I mean, something like the Wii, everyone who owned a Wii I'm sure there are plenty of people who owned a Wii who wouldn't call themselves gamers, and if you gave them that label, they'd be like, I'm not a gamer. No, I just own a Wii. I play Wii Sports. That's like what I do. There's like this really strange distinction between the two. I guess if someone's on public transit watching a film, whether that's on a tablet or a laptop or something, I don't think there's any stigma, is there? Like there's none at all. Specifically video games, and
I think that's because of the nascency of the industry, right? Like the very idea that someone would be called a movie person or a buff. There are movie buffs out there, right? But that's a very different thing. Everyone watches films, everyone watches television, everyone listens to music. Like these are things that have penetrated the mainstream, and because of that, there is no label associated with it. So that's why you can be someone watching a film on your iPad, whereas if you have a device that is just for playing games, this entire thing is bound up with the label of being someone who plays games, right? That is the ultimate issue here. The societal norm exists because the societal group of the gamer exists still as a thing.
Yeah. And my own personal experience was, while I was at school and I was younger, sort of up until the age of 18, I was very conscious of like playing video games and being seen to play a lot of video games, and I wouldn't want to be
self-conscious to the point where you deleted an entire YouTube channel because of the idea of you playing Pokemon would potentially get out to people.
Exactly, and it was just it was a stigma I was scared of. It was like everyone's just going to think I play video games. It's like, well, I do play video games, so why should I be scared of that? But ultimately, when you're still formulating who you are, for me at that point in time, it felt like too much. But the second I was at university and I like discovered who I was, I guess you could argue, and I'm very comfortable in what I do with the podcast and the amount I play video games, and I enjoy telling people about it who are interested, and if they want to judge me and say, oh, you're a video gamer or you play too many video games, then they're allowed to judge. I'm a lot more confident in and of myself to play games in public, to talk about the podcast, to talk about what I do, and talk about how much I enjoy it and I feel this passion for it. And that's something that's definitely changed since I was younger. I should say I'm now 25, and that was when I was 18. So I have definitely changed quite a lot in that time. I don't know. How do you feel, MBZ?
Yeah, I think it's definitely an age thing, right? It's a fear. It's all bound up with the bullshit of school, right? It's just
exactly,
everyone has to put on a face because no one can really be themselves because there are cliques and all this bullshit and things will spread. The whole idea of like stuff spreading across the campus and everything. That's just it's very cliche, but it's also kind of true. It's in a bad way. And we have the examples of our friend Ali T and the Pokemon team thing. And there was this one time when we were walking up to chapel, and Ali T and me were just fucking bitching at each other because of whatever reason. And Ali T was just saying out loud something about like, oh, what Noun does on his weekend? He fucking plays Mario and Luigi Dream Team out loud to everyone. I was like, and I just didn't really say anything. And then one of my other friends was like, the sadder thing is that what he does on his weekends. So I shut Ali T up. So that was hilarious. But, it's one of those things where, I wasn't very overt about the fact that I was really deep into games. There's always people having these conversations about, gamers. And I think the term gamer became a very loaded and very negative thing, like to be derogatory at school even though people were playing fucking CSGO in third form and all that stuff. And I think it's maybe more with Nintendo, actually. I think it's actually much more to do with the idea of the perception of Nintendo as a more child-friendly platform, as a more younger platform. The idea that you would play something like a Pokemon or a Mario or whatever, one of their franchises, would be looked down on more. And I think that was very much for us because we were so deep into Pokemon. I think it all really stems back to that, the trading card stuff back when we were in prep school. Is that stuff was big forever, and then everyone kind of, got out of the fad. And like fads existed for however long, and then of course, they disappeared and people left them behind. But that's the sort of thing that we kept doing, and so as a result, you feel the necessity to not talk about it. So that was definitely something that I think kind of is a through line that has come from that point and has continued to go forward.
And it was funny because like I was on a flight with Caroline just a few weeks ago, and I had obviously brought my Switch, and I was planning to play some Zelda, and she was sitting next to me, and she felt a bit like uncomfortable that she was with me and that I was playing Zelda on a plane, and I was like, honestly, I feel completely comfortable about this. Why do you feel uncomfortable? And she's just like, I don't know, it's just a bit weird. I'm like, I feel comfortable playing Zelda here. I don't have to hide that. Like I'll do it. And like I think the answer to your question, Colin, is just play your video games whenever you feel comfortable to play them. I certainly agree with you that maybe if I was in a bar with like friends watching football or something, I wouldn't want to just get out my Switch randomly and start playing it. But maybe I don't know, if I was by myself I might. If I was by myself and not interacting with others, I'd happily do it. But I think just wherever you feel comfortable. I mean, you're 26, Colin. You're same age as us. You know, you are who you are, and if people don't want to accept that, then that's up to them. But it shouldn't affect your own actions ultimately. If you're comfortable in playing video games, as I'm sure you are, then just play them.
Yeah, and I think the thing that happened with me is I decided to not give a shit. And as soon as that happened, everything disappeared. Like, I'm just telling people, yeah, I just do this fucking Pokemon YouTube channel. Like, I just don't really, I'm like, but the thing with that is interesting is also because at the time I could say, oh yeah, also I get paid for doing this. And I was like, it's sort of a moment of pride almost. It's like, yeah, I play video games and get paid to do it, which was very interesting.
Yeah.
And that maybe helped to spur that on somewhat. But, you know, it's also this idea of, well, you know, there are these people in this bar, and so the thing with watching the football game is I was just with my dad or whatever, and he, you know, we were just out in town. He wants to get a beer and go watch the football. I don't really give a fuck because I don't want to watch football, so I just pop out my 3DS, start playing Shovel Knight, because why not? And anyone in that bar, they're focusing on the football. They're not watching me. They don't care what I'm doing. I'm just sitting there I've got a fucking beer next to me. I'm never going to see these people ever again. And my dad realizes that we're going to chill here, play this 3DS, and we'll have a bit of a chat at the same time. You know, it's not really a big issue. And then I think even bigger than that was me going to the gym playing my 3DS.
Right.
Certainly, at the gym, there are all these university students, and they're all training, all this stuff, and I'm fucking holding it up to my face, cycling on this thing in the center of the room, like that people could be looking at me thinking,
that is bold. I love that.
Yeah, I literally don't give a fuck because I don't know any of these people. I'm never going to talk to any of these people, probably. Although university's weird about that because there's lots of... You'll run into people, essentially. Yeah. But that said, you know, the inhibition is gone. I literally couldn't care less. So that's how I decided.
But, like, we talk about these societal norms, like the way we change these societal norms is by the people who enjoy playing video games and want to play those video games in public by playing those video games in public. That's how we're going to change societal norms. And if everyone who enjoys video games on the go wants to play them in public, then in 5, 10, 20 years time, that's when everyone will be like, oh yeah, everyone just plays video games in public. That's just what people do. And it's maybe... It was originally associated with a younger audience, but as we know, video game audiences have been getting older and older because those first people who played video games are getting older now. So like the average age of people playing video games when Pokemon Red and Blue came out was far younger than it is now. And like it's just a case of changing the societal norms, and I think it is getting there slowly, and I still think that adults playing video games in public is far more socially acceptable now than it was 5, 10 years ago. Especially, definitely, I would argue in the UK. I don't know about maybe other areas of the world, but that will change and keep changing and getting better. And you just have to be confident in yourself and just, like you said, Emily, it doesn't matter. These people around you, you don't have to talk to them. You have to interact with them. You're just doing what you're doing. It's just be who you are.
Yeah. That's probably the best way to go about it. It's interesting because I think we have an example where this kind of stigma has already been pushed to the side, and that is Japan, where it's perfectly natural for people to be playing video games all the time, everywhere. You know, they're a very mobile-focused society now, and you know, handhelds maybe fallen off. But I remember, you know, whenever people would talk about going to Japan on video game podcasts and things like that, they would always say on the train, they would see people playing PSPs or DSs or all that stuff. Like, it was just a natural thing that people had with them all the time. And I think that we will probably get to that place in other regions as well.
And I guess the success of the Switch is quite important to this argument. Like,
sure,
this is all tied.
To be quite frank, the Switch is basically the last bastion for gaming handhelds.
Is mobile gaming going to take over, or like is the Switch replacing the 3DS? Is it the successor, etc.? Like, this is massively interlocked with. Arguably, in terms of gaming in public, handheld gaming and where that goes in the future. But definitely the stigmas we've been talking about are massively associated with home console gaming as well. It's just handheld gaming is obviously where those things are more public and more out in the open. So yeah, it's an interesting one, and I'm sure it'll change so much in the future, so much.
If you enjoyed this discussion and would like to hear more, consider subscribing to us on YouTube and following the podcast playlist. You can also find us on iTunes and various other places. Follow us on Twitter at TNL Podcast and email us thisnintendolife@gmail.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.